Welcome to Live America podcast. This is Hatem, alongside me, the one and only Noam Dworman, owner of the Comedy Cellar. Hi, Noam.
Hello, Hatem.
Two amazing guests. The return. It's been a while. Jonathan Wackrow, CNN Law Enforcement Analyst and former Secret Service agent. It's been a long time, my friend.
It sure has been. I think it's been a year or maybe even a little bit more than that, but I always appreciate coming back. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And one of my favorite, of course, and a great friend, host of the Political Orphanage podcast, comedian and author, Andrew Heaton.
Hello, good to be back. Good to see you.
And he's much taller, by the way, in person than he looks in this podcast.
Yeah, I get that a lot. People are always surprised to find out that I'm not 50 and that I'm 6 feet tall. Apparently, people think I'm like a 53-year-old guy who's very short, but I am neither.
Well, good.
I'm only short inside.
All right, let's get to it. So we'll talk about some of the top stories in the country. Obviously, one of the most talked about topics right now, and that's why we have the perfect guest, is the ICE operations in general on the fatal shooting tragedy of Nicole Good, and there's another shooting that happened a couple of days ago. But Jonathan, based on what we know, the videos, the official statement, all this, do you think the shooting was justified?
Well, listen, I think when you look at the shooting itself, it has to be looked at, through two lenses. First is the legal lens as to whether or not they're under the law and under DHS policy, was this an appropriate use of deadly force, and is it allowed under the law and policy? The second optic you have to look at it through is a judgment, and the judgment of the agent or officer at that time. Was that the right action to take based upon everything that was going on? And I think that when we look at the video, everybody is looking at it through the latter judgment, which is, well, the officer could have stepped aside. He could have, tried to de-escalate. Others in the area could have done this. There's a lot of things that could have been done. But let me take it first from the legal perspective. From the legal perspective, this is going to be, I predict that, through an investigation, which we really now know is basically almost non-existent, that this is going to be seen as a, justified utilization of deadly force by this officer. And the reason being is because the way that the Supreme Court has actually laid out the justification for the utilization of deadly force and applying it by the officer in this case, it comes down to what's known as the objective reasonableness standard. And what it says is essentially it gives a lot of leeway to the officer themselves to articulate whether or not their life and or the lives of others around them were at imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury. And again, it's very subjective to the officer's statement because it's from their point of view at that exact moment. And when you look at it like that, the court has given agents and officers on the federal level a very broad spectrum to articulate that their life was in danger at that moment. So under those conditions, under the conditions that are set forth by the Supreme Court, this will be seen as a justified use of deadly force. Now, that is bonkers when you think of it from a judgment standpoint, right? There are a lot of things that, law enforcement analysts have looked at, this case itself and said there are a lot of things that could have been done different to avoid any escalation, not of just deadly force, but any type of force that was necessary. And I think that that is where you are seeing this moment, the killing of Renee Good, act as a catalyst for mobilization of protests. And what's really happening across Minneapolis isn't just a localized issue. This is actually a national stress test of how public safety is being managed in these highly charged environments. And it continues to challenge and stress not only the people of Minneapolis, but now when we start talking about, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, the threat of enacting the Insurrection Act. What does that actually mean for public safety? Again, not just in Minneapolis, but across the country. So public safety is being stressed in this one moment, being judged in two different ways. Again, now we have a polarization, not just politically, but in how we're judging this one single act, and it's mobilizing both the left and the right in different ways, and we're seeing that conflict manifest itself day after day on the streets of Minneapolis.
We'll take
Hey, Jonathan.
thoughts about that from Andrew and Noam. But before that, I gotta tell you something. I was telling Noam before this that I have a stress test tomorrow and I'm trying to forget about it. And he keeps saying it's a stress test for the country. Damn it. Andrew, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I wanted to ask Jonathan a couple of questions because he is more aware of the legalities of this than I am. So it sounds like there's a constitutional precedent that gives qualified immunity to federal officers in this regard.
No.
And no?
So this is not qualified immunity. This is actually looking at this singular act, the escalation of deadly force, and so if it was qualified immunity, or what the vice president had indicated that these officers have absolute immunity, we wouldn't even be talking about this. There'd be no investigation. There'd be nothing. What we're actually looking at is, from the legal perspective, was this a justified shooting under the context of the law and under DHS policy? And in DHS
The policy doesn't matter.
yeah. Well, that's again that goes to the second part, which is the judgment side.
No, I don't want to, but you're talking about a criminal thing. You're talking about criminal intent.
hmm
That's not a policy thing. The question is, did he want to kill somebody, or did he reasonably think he was in danger of life and limb? It's simple.
hmm
I mean, it's a simple thing to understand. He had to have reasonably thought he was in peril. And if he reasonably thought he was in peril, that's without regard to policy. There
Yeah.
can be no policy which,
Yeah.
in other words, a policy can't authorize him to kill somebody.
No. But
Apologies.
the policy does authorize the use of deadly force. And it
Yeah, but
aligns
the policy can't authorize the use of deadly force if it's not reasonable. He's still a criminal.
Yeah.
So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage. I don't have a law degree. So I'm just trying to understand the basics of this. It's not qualified immunity, but there is some sort of federal precedent where there's a greater degree of latitude for the person that's potentially prosecuted. Yes or no? Like based on it's there's high stakes, it's immediate, that kind of thing. Like that's it's not qualified immunity, but it's kind of like it.
Yeah, so the officers or agents in the federal context under the use of force policy, in the application of deadly force, they are judged through what as we were talking about, this reasonableness standard, meaning that taking the totality of the circumstances at the moment that force, in this case deadly force, was applied. Did the officer feel that they were in direct threat of imminent death or serious bodily injury? And the articulation of that, and this is where the court has given a wide spectrum of latitude to the officers in the case, is that it's basically their word at that moment to articulate why did they feel that their life, in the moment that they pull the trigger to take somebody's life, why did they feel their life was in danger?
I don't believe that's correct, Jonathan. It's not their word. It has to be reasonable based on the circumstances. Otherwise, they could just lie.
Yeah. Well, but you have to take it from their perspective and articulating that the reasonable standard is,
of course, but that's the same thing if you're not a police officer.
Well, this is what the Supreme Court had given. So this is what these policies are aligned to.
I don't think this is that complicated. I mean, at least in terms of the normal counsel. I don't know, but manslaughter may be a very particular negligent homicide. I don't know about that stuff. That's really, and Minnesota has its own weird, as I recall from the Chauvin case, it has its own weird, typical negligent homicide statute, which is whatever. But normally, it's really a question of, as the car accelerated toward him, did he have a reasonable right to think he had to act to save his own life? It's as simple as that. And
what we don't know, what we don't know in that case is, was he acting as his life was in danger, or there's a lot of discussion around, was he acting because he felt that his partner's life was in danger?
I think that's
Well,
I think that's bunk. But
well, you can say it's bunk, but here, this is the problem. We don't know because there's no investigation, so no one's going to reveal why.
Well, there's going to be an investigation one way or another. because it's going to be a civil case. But I mean, it's not like it's not going to be an investigation. But the problem is that, and I've said this, like, we have the ability to look at the video from five different angles,
Mhm.
rewind it, notice this detail, notice that detail, and then start compiling a list. And that's completely unfair to the defendant, obviously. All the defendant, like if I were a defense attorney, I would say, listen, jury, this is
Mhm.
what I think is fair. You should watch this 3-second video from his perspective once and only once. And when you look at that video, if you can tell beyond a doubt that his life was not in danger, then you should convict him. Otherwise, there's a car coming at you. You can't see the tires or this or that. He doesn't see all that. Now, do I think that this woman was going to hit him? No, I think it's clear she wasn't going to hit him. But if you hit the accelerator and you start coming at somebody and they panic, you shouldn't hit the accelerator and drive towards somebody. I mean, he's not a murderer.
Mhm.
He should probably pay through the nose
Yeah.
for negligence in one way or another. But I mean, you want a police officer in jail for the rest of his life because somebody drove a car at him and he panicked?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
is that
Listen,
what we've come to?
I have said this before. I've been in that exact same position. I have been in the position of that officer during an arrest in New York City years ago, back in, I think it was 2004, 2005. We were executing an arrest near the Triborough Bridge. And we had a vehicle that had additional suspects in it that actually came right towards me. It was the same scenario. I mean, I was
Yeah.
probably 5 or 6 feet away from the front bumper of the car in the wrong position, by the way, because I had just come across.
Yeah.
They hit the accelerator. I already had my weapon out, so I didn't even holster it because we were already executing an arrest.
Hmm.
I had my weapon drawn on the driver,
Yeah.
and I could have taken that shot at that moment. But in that moment, I knew where I was. I was right by the Neptune Diner. There was a lot of people on the sidewalk behind us. It was only about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Um, I knew that if I actually took that shot,
Yeah.
I would, basically take out, with a high likelihood to take out the driver, which would leave an errant vehicle, and that errant vehicle would cause more damage. I ended up not taking the shot. I actually sidestepped, got clipped by the side of the car, and the car fled, and we ended up catching him later on. But again,
Well, can
it's
I
a
comment on
judgment call.
can I
There's a
comment on
judgment call by the
yeah,
officers that they need to make in that moment.
yeah, I think that as you describe it, you were actually in a more dangerous situation than he had a reason, because you were actually dealing with a criminal, and this woman
Mhm.
actually, was not a hardened criminal. She was
Yeah.
a we know her, we know the type of person, if we're going to profile her. She's like,
Mhm.
one of these, loudmouth, social justice agitator
Mhm.
types. But having said that, it's just important to point out that every year a number of police officers hesitate
Mhm.
and wind up dead.
Correct.
And if they had taken action, we'd be here calling them criminals. So, how many times did somebody come up on a car to make an arrest and he didn't? He waited to be sure, and he
Mhm.
got a shot in the head. And if he had acted, I just no, no. Now you're a
Yeah.
criminal. These are
But
these are impossible situations.
Well, let me
they're
ask.
impossible situations. You're categorizing the exact issue that
Yeah,
is faced by law enforcement every single day. They're women and men who are, whether they're federal, state, or local, are put into these positions
yeah,
where these decisions have to be made in milliseconds, but
yeah.
they're judged for years, right?
That's
They're
right.
judged by the court. They're judged by the court of public opinion for years on whether or not that was a justified use of
Let,
force.
let me let me ask you this, because it's I know in New York, for example, if somebody running with a car, you don't chase them in busy streets because you can
Mhm.
hit but isn't that come down to training, you know in certain situations? Because I know that somebody like in Secret Service versus FBI versus so how versus ICE versus police, of course, if we're in that situation, he's still human, but also the training. Is it true? Like, what do we know about the ICE agent training? And is that really comes down to it, or it's just like
Yeah.
impossible from a human perspective to react?
Well, it's a great point that you bring up around training, because it's been focal to the talking points around this issue, and there's a little bit of a nuance here. This individual, the officer, has been part of the DHS for well over 10 years. So the academies and the training that he went through initially, and then the progressive training throughout his career would have been different than individuals who are being hired by ICE today. Over the last 12 months, individuals who have been hired under a new accelerated hiring policy by ICE, they have a much reduced training curriculum. And the intent there is to get a baseline of training done and get them on the street as quickly as possible. That is going to lead to a significant amount of problems moving forward because, again, they're not taking into account the complexities of law enforcement, especially those who do not come from law enforcement, which a lot of people who are joining ICE today have no experience with law enforcement beforehand. This individual did have a significant level of training. Went through one of the exact same academies that I went through. I went through, about 10 years prior to them, but it was a federal law enforcement training center where that curriculum was significantly enhanced. So this individual did have a lot of time spent on the street in high pressure situations. Was trained not just as in their baseline academies, but again had advanced training for different roles that he had over time. But again, you have to look at in that moment, training tactics and experience are essential. And from a legal perspective, it's going to be seen one way. From a judgment perspective, it's going to be seen another way. Whether or not, like again, we hear this all the time, is it DHS policy to stand in training to stand in front of a vehicle? Most law enforcement agencies, it is not.
But
I
is
was
it also
trained
about
never to
who
stand.
you're chasing? I mean, back to Norm's point too. Like,
Mhm.
it's not like a high end criminal, or it's like, isn't that part of the training? Like, who you're
You have to take the
chasing? What's the
totality of the
purpose? Like,
Yeah,
it
you
could
have to take
let
the
her go.
totality of the circumstances at the time and look at this officer was engaging with Miss Good beforehand, with her partner beforehand. He was walking around the car. There was no escalation on either party up until that very last second in when
No,
the
he
application of
didn't.
deadly
Let me say a
force.
few things. He didn't pull out his gun. He pulled out his gun at literally the second she started to move forward. Now, I feel like he could
Actually, it
have.
was in reverse. He started when she was still in reverse. He unholstered.
Okay, that's not the way it looked to me, but I'll take
Mhm.
your word for it. It took to me, looked to me that as she came, as she, the frame that she went forward.
Mhm.
But as far as training goes, it's just very important. People have a lot of trouble understanding this.
Mhm.
We don't generalize. We don't generally criminalize mistakes, even
Mhm.
tragic mistakes, even panics. We put criminals in jail.
Mhm.
Criminality is almost always associated with an intention, a
Right.
criminal intention.
Correct.
With law enforcement officers, I said on my other show, this is verging on jury nullification, but I believe this. It's one thing if you have a dude who wants to get involved, like the George Zimmerman with Trayvon Martin. He's under orders to do this stuff. He puts his life on the line. We send him into this situation. We know that in a certain number of cases, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, whatever it is, things like this are going to happen.
Mhm.
We can't start hauling these people off to jail absent evidence that they're criminals. And as far as the training goes, yeah, if he's trained badly, that's a reason to sue the municipality
Mhm.
for their negligence in how they handle it. But the truth is, in Minnesota, this was a very unpopular position, although a lot of people are coming around to it. I held it in 2020 or whenever it was. The only reason Derek Chauvin ever put his knee on this part of George Floyd's back or neck was because there was a picture of that in the training manual that taught him to do that method.
Mhm.
And then he did it. He would have never, it's quite a coincidence that he would do that outside of being trained that way. And then he did it. And now he's in jail for the rest of his life. But
Hey,
in a
no,
total political prosecution,
Mhm.
this guy Derek Chauvin should not. If it was I was in my law school class and that exact fact pattern had been presented to the class with
Mhm.
no racial implications, no nothing, just a guy, an officer does it. 100% of the students would have said no. He's not guilty of murder there. Clearly,
But you
he
have
was
to put the racial in.
it was a bad execution of something that he had been trained to do. The training was outrageous. This whole
Yeah.
excited delirium, all the things they filled his head with. You can have superhuman strength. If you read all the things they had filled Chauvin's head with, you understand exactly why he did what he did, and it
Mhm.
makes perfect sense considering, in fact, earlier in that whole scenario, he hadn't even been rough with the guy when he refused to get in the car. He said he was claustrophobic. Okay, you can come out, you can lie down. Like the whole, why does the whole thing not make sense? Because of the training they filled his
Yep.
head with. And this
Yep.
poor guy's in jail. So, I call bullshit on the entire system here. It's all political. Now they want this guy in jail, they want that guy in jail. It's awful. In
So
my
Well,
opinion.
hey,
but why you don't
so
take the other? So, sorry, Andrew, I'll let you know. But
no,
why
it's
don't you
okay.
take
No,
the
you're
other
fine.
side of it? Is like it's also some of them are listen, I love I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, and I appreciate what they do, and I know exactly the dangers they go through. But there are few of them that power hungry, and they think they're better than
Yeah,
a
you
lot.
got to prove it. You have to
Well,
prove it beyond. You have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mhm.
well, this is the point. Then let's have
Yeah,
an
but how are you going to prove
investigation.
it beyond a reasonable doubt when the car was coming at him?
But there's no investigation, and also who he chasing. A mom is like you have to put all these aspects that
Hatem, can I ask you a
not
question?
happen.
Hatem, there should be an investigation, but
Yes.
really, what do you think that investigation is gonna turn up other than what we already know? Like what is there? Some private conversation that he's gonna say, I wanted to kill this bitch? Like we see the angle of the video from every angle. There's
Yes.
nothing like what do you want to
If
what do you
she got
think is
away,
being
what would have
secret?
happened? They're gonna arrest her around the corner? Like it's just Andrew, go ahead.
No, it's not about her get out of the way. It's about whether or not he felt that this car might have hit him.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, but I
it.
think that Noam, your point's very well, and I think Hatem, your point's well taken.
No,
It,
he's not.
Yes, it is.
the resolution here, though, is to have a transparent investigation. When you have the deputy attorney general saying this is case closed, we're not doing anything, and he's already intimating that from the civil side that there's going to be no no prosecution there.
How can there be no civil process? Anybody can bring an action.
Well, no, by that there's no that the federal government is not
I
taking
see,
any
I see, I
civil
see.
action
Sorry.
against them. So
I see.
from that perspective, and making matters somewhat worse in sort of fueling the animosity amongst all stakeholders right now in Minneapolis is that the fact that the local police investigation has been boxed out of the federal investigation. So again, if everything is holding true that you say, then why not have a transparent investigation that would actually either clear the officer based upon everything that we're saying, or would not? But again, that is what I think people are really upset about is that they're not doing that in this case. Now, we just had that second shooting in Minneapolis where the locals were invited to collaborate and work on the investigation. So again, why do we have two different standards? And that's what I think people are questioning.
Well, we know the
Just
answer.
a quick thing,
Yeah,
and I know Andrew want to go, but just a quick thing,
yeah.
two things. One on the training. The
Mhm.
training is not. I didn't mean just a lot of times like, oh, he's been. I'm talking about the training of everybody that was there. Because
Mhm.
if somebody, I'm sure in the training they will tell you if somebody's escalating, try to de-escalate. If somebody, I'm sure there's part of it. So it's the same thing with the Derek Chauvin thing. There's a lot of officers. That's why they also went to jail with him. The other thing is like he himself suffered from a same incident a few months before.
Mhm.
That he almost died. He had like I think 37 stitches in his leg. The officer when he was chasing a criminal and stuff like that. So you have to take also the psychological part of it.
Mhm.
And was he supposed to come back to work in a similar situation that quick?
So those are policy issues, but the law does not look at it that way. They take it in the totality of the circumstances from the officer's point of view at that moment in time, not in hindsight. So all of those other atmospherics at the time that deadly force is applied, while those atmospherics are
Why did the other
important,
officer
but
in the
they're
Derek
not
Chauvin?
applicable to making a determination of whether or not
So
it
why
be
the officer
applied.
in the Derek Chauvin, the other officers went to jail as well?
Yeah, so were two different cases entirely. I'm talking about the application of that immediate deadly force because that is what was applied right here and then in Minneapolis. So the other case, I don't want to go through each line item of like what each officer did, but in this case, again, it's going to be judged from the officer's standpoint, not in hindsight, under that legal context. Again, judgment side is different, but and no,
What about you, Andrew?
Um, I had some questions. You've covered them, and my objections were actually covered by Hatem. So I'm pretty good on this one. The only thing that I will add to this is, from a media perspective, as somebody without law, I was horrified with the shooting, in that everyone in America became an instantaneous ballistics expert based on 6 seconds of video feed on Twitter, and every single person, from what I can tell, present company accepted, went 100%. This is clearly a murder, or 100%. This is clearly a self-defense act. None of the video footage and changed anybody's mind. It was like you remember that in 2017, the dress that was either blue or gold, and everybody was like, no, it's absolutely blue. It was like that, except a woman got shot in the face. And I was very surprised and disheartened by the incredibly immediate partisan reaction to it, followed with an inability to even perceive that anybody else could see a different thing. And I like where you're both coming from, of actually getting into the law, which is a different thing entirely from whether or not the homicide was justified morally.
This is where the media really is asleep at the switch, or just like falls down on the job. Is that, as you describe it, some people were immediately saying it's a murder, and people were saying immediately not a murder. And what gets lost in that is the huge disparity between the standards, meaning that you can feel very strongly that it was a murder, and when press say, are you sure beyond a reasonable doubt, and you might have to say, no, I can't really be sure, and that's all you need to say he's not guilty. And the people who say that he's innocent, they have the overwhelming odds on there, or however you want to. I'm having trouble articulating, but you know what I'm saying. It's 99.9% versus like 0.1%. That's what. So the people who say it's in the 0.1% category, as opposed to people saying 99.9%, they're not actually calculating the fact that they have tremendously different standards to meet before they express that opinion. And the media doesn't make that clear. They make it like it could be this way or that way, like you're drawing a line in the center. You're not all over here. Is it on this side?
Even the internet
It wouldn't be a murder.
You froze for a minute. Even the internet don't like it, don't agree with you. It's like, you know what? Let me cut this bullshit time.
All right. Well, anyway, obviously
there too, again, everybody, like, it was an interesting litmus test, in that my blue-coated friends immediately saw it as an obvious murder. My red-coated friends immediately saw it as an obvious act of self-defense with no ambiguity. And like, to go to a slightly less fun version than the blue dress, white dress, was the Covington kids from whenever that was, 5 years ago. The lesson I learned from that was, when you see something that is obvious, try to figure out the context of the surrounding video. So like, my instincts watching that video, not having any of the legal background you guys have, or law enforcement training, was just, I would like to see more context from this, because what I saw was a 6-second video on Twitter of what appears to be a lady driving off as a guy shoots at her. So my initial instincts were, oh, that lady got shot, horrible. But I would have, like, my immediate thought was, I want to see what immediately preceded this. Like, did she just hit 3 guys? I don't know. But no one else needed to see any of that stuff. Everybody was leaping to conclusions. I like the meta-level analysis that you're bringing to it, and I appreciate that. I wish that more people were engaging in that. I wish more people had taken a deep breath and said, let's try to figure out what's actually happening. Let's figure out what the law is, as opposed to just cheerlead for their team.
It is hard to believe, or not hard to believe, hard to understand, based on my way I see the world, that he didn't realize just intuitively and instinctively that this woman was not a threat. We've seen situations where an irate girlfriend says, fuck you, I'm out of here. And she drives off and the boyfriend goes, whoa, you almost hit me.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a perfect position to pause.
Yeah, actually, most of Noam's exercise is almost getting run over by former lovers. I know this for a fact. He's not in a jogging club. He just calls up ex-girlfriends. They nearly hit him with a car.
Yeah, but this is.
But
I mean, he's so
wait,
close
wait,
to the
wait, wait,
core.
wait, wait, but let's say, but on the other hand, I'm always, and Jonathan might identify with this. I'm always mindful of the fact that although I'm very quick to believe that a police officer kicked the shit out of somebody in the back of a police car where no one would ever know about it, these police officers are very, very well aware that if
Mhm.
they shoot somebody in full public view of cell phone cameras, their life is over one way or another. He will never recover from this. So there's tremendous incentive, even for a criminally depraved heart, to not choose that moment in his long life to decide to kill somebody like he always wanted to, right? Like if you're a murderer and finally here's my chance, let me kill somebody in front of that really doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
And that is almost for that reason it becomes almost impossible for me to believe
But it's
murder
not
somebody.
it's not the only option. There's also emotional intelligence. You can be not wanted to do something, but you couldn't control your emotion at that moment, which is,
Yes,
if you
but
are if you are at the comedy cellar and somebody coming out and doesn't want to pay, the bouncer can start to stop
do
and
that. Hatem,
yeah,
before you make your point, because this happens a lot,
you froze again.
is that like you have to
Hold on,
imagine that this guy,
you
you have
froze
to imagine.
again. You froze. So you said this has happened a lot, and then you froze.
Go ahead.
Noam, it might be worth turning your video off just because you're freezing a lot and seeing if that would free up the bandwidth for audio.
Yeah,
I
you
don't.
said
Let me check my speed test. Go
you,
ahead.
you, you said that a lot, and then you stopped.
I just said that it happens a lot that I have I have very fast that
Hmm.
that you're not engaging with my point. You're just shooting back.
Oh no,
My
no,
point
I'm
is
engaging with your point. I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm saying like there's different angles to it. You cannot not. Of course, you said you're making a great point that people not in the same situation where they see the officers only a few seconds. And I'm adding to that that also there's an intelligent emotional. Maybe it's not that he always. It doesn't have to be that he always dreamt of killing somebody. I don't think so. But that. All right, let's move to the Insurrection Act. You know. Andrew, you want to explain it to listeners in case they didn't know, since you.
You know what? Actually, we're still outside of my wheelhouse here. I would love to weigh in on this after I hear from people that have legal training in this one.
All right, Jonathan.
Well, the Insurrection Act is, it's a tool that you can be applied by the President of the United States to essentially federalize military, and so that is across the entire spectrum. So, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines can be mobilized under the Insurrection Act by the President to shift to a policing function. So, what that means is, and again, it has been used in the past. But this would, in this case, it would shift it, civil policing. So, civil policing by the Minneapolis Police Department, by the Minnesota, State Patrol, and all other state functions. That policing function would be fall under federalized control of federal forces. So again, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, as directed by the President of the United States. And it would move support to a command authority under federal troops. So what does that actually mean? It means that federal troops can now in Minneapolis and the broader region can engage in direct law enforcement functions. Now we haven't seen that before. What we've seen the president do is mobilize and federalize National Guard forces like we did in Los Angeles. But those federalized troops did not have direct law enforcement functions. Under the Insurrection Act, they would have direct law enforcement functions. So, what that means is that they could start controlling crowds. So, they could do crowd control, they could implement curfews, they could implement checkpoints as necessary. The entire area security can now be federally directed. And it really puts local law enforcement in a very, very difficult position because they almost will start operating in a subordinate role to the federal operation, not necessarily a parallel role. So when you think about public safety at large, right, your responsibility under public safety is to maintain civil order, but also address the criminal element. daily policing functions will still need to work. How will they do that if all of a sudden you have this surge of military forces on the ground taking charge, essentially?
So, Jonathan, it sounds like this the Insurrection Act is just declaring martial law. Is that the
It's
quick
getting
thing on that?
it's getting very close to that.
Yeah, Tim,
When
I
did
think I'm
that happen
against it.
again? When did that happen before?
92?
Yeah, I forget what the historicals are on that. It happened during like school segregation times. It happened, the president has implemented this. I believe in L.A. during the L.A. riots.
Yeah.
It was enforced or implemented by the then Bush administration.
Yeah. George
Um,
H.W. Bush was the last
yep,
guy to implement it, but he did it at the request of the California government.
yep.
So
So
it was him working in tandem with local and state control, which is very different than the Minneapolis situation.
yeah.
Noam, what's your thoughts? And
I don't know about this.
about the Insurrection
I
Act.
haven't been following it.
I like to see
Wait,
them.
Tim, can I weigh in a little bit on this? So I
Of
don't know
course.
all of the legality of it. I know a little bit about posse comitatus, as best I can pronounce it with my Oklahoma non-Latin accent. Uh, as an American, I don't like having armed troops standing around. I think it's fucking weird. Like I am suspicious of standing armies. I've got a lot of Jefferson in my blood. I don't like. I'm here in the D.C. area. Everybody that I've seen with the National Guard is just hanging out. I haven't seen anybody roughing anybody up. No, I haven't seen anything bad. I don't want Americans to get used to military people standing around providing law enforcement. I think that's screwed up, and it's something that prepares us for something much worse down the line. In the case of Minnesota, I don't think that the crisis is sufficient based on what I've seen to warrant this. Like you've got a very large Somali population. 90% of them are there legally. 10% of them aren't. We can deal with them. I think that a lot of this is political. I think Trump likes to create belligerent situations that get media attention and that he can win. He also likes making progressives' head explode. And I think that this is moving us close enough to martial law on a insufficiently good pretext to justify it. And that's a bad thing, and we should be concerned about it.
Yeah, but Andrew, I want to just make one point here because as you've been in DC, you've seen the National Guard mobilized across the city. But remember, those troops are not in direct law enforcement roles. They are still because they're mobilized with a greater area of operation just because it's Washington D.C. But what you would see under the Insurrection Act, the deployment of troops would put those soldiers in direct law enforcement engagement, not support roles. So they could do everything that law enforcement officers, can do. They would have that exact same authority. So we have not seen that in a long time, and that really shifts the entire paradigm of what public safety actually is. And to me, I've talked about this that what we're witnessing right now with this divide between federal law enforcement and state and local law enforcement in Minneapolis is showing an operational gap in how public safety is being applied in the region. Law enforcement works in public safety works best when everybody is unified, working in coordination and in parallel with each other. The application of troops in a direct law enforcement role won't cause an operational gap. It'll cause an operational fissure because you start losing the command and control over law enforcement functions, both from how to maintain civil order, but like who's answering 911 calls and how are you going out and engaging in direct calls for service across the region. Again, if you have local municipalities disengaging with federal officials, the consequence lies on the community itself. They start becoming the victims across all of this.
No,
Hey,
man.
Tim, why are you in favor of the Insurrection Act, Tim?
Because I'm from the Middle East. I love the army in the streets. But I gotta tell you something, and I know I'm gonna ask.
I think it depends on what side you're on, though.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like it's
Well, the side with the tanks for sure. But do you any? I want to ask the three of you this because I kind of like I was watching a movie yesterday, and all the Google ads, all the ads that comes, if you before you watch a movie in TV or something, if you or like in YouTube. I know some of you don't have like subscription, but I do. Any of you get the self-deporting app commercials? Of
No.
course not. You mother. I'm the only one that's getting it.
Wait, is
Yeah,
that
so
a
it
real
comes
thing, or
out.
the self-deporting ads?
Yeah, so app. It's an app
Yeah.
that you
Oh,
self.
okay.
So it comes. First of all, you watch TV, and all of a sudden comes out as like, if you're here illegally, you have two choices. Either you self-deport using this app, we're gonna pay you, and you're gonna have a chance to come legally, or we're gonna find you and you're gonna deport you, and you get all these pictures. It's so
Yeah.
funny, but these targeted apps, it's been all. I ask all my friends, even obviously I'm American citizen. Everybody born here. Anybody with the similar names, we get you guys don't get it, but it's
Wait,
so
can I get like
Oh, yeah.
can I trick this into getting a free trip to England?
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
My name is Heaton.
I
Can I be
mean,
like, oh, yes, I apologize. I overstayed my visa.
Yeah.
You should probably book me to London and then just fly over and come back when I want.
it's so funny. The commercial is so funny.
And they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on these ads, hundreds of millions. It's just wild when you start looking at the expenditure on all of the media attempts and amplification of immigration action that's been done by DHS that's paid for by the government. It's just a wild amount.
Charged with raping a child. Yeah, it's crazy, but it just like it's so fun. Like they're willing to pay and just like anything. Just
Mhm.
and what's her name is in the commercial. The head of the
Christy Noam.
yeah.
Chrissy, no.
She's like, we will, and they get. It's so funny. I'll send you the commercial one day, but it's just like it's been hot. All right,
Here's my immigration plan for when I run for president. You can come over if you're hot, rich, or smart. That's it. If you've got a degree we could use, come on over. If you're a smoke show, join our gene pool. If you've got $100 million, you can live in America. Like that's how it's gonna work.
Well,
We'll have a fourth category. If you've got really good ethnic food, if you promise to open up a restaurant, we'll let you come over.
I know you're joking, but let's not remember that the 9/11 hijackers, they were very rich, so, and they were supported by, you know who. So,
well, how good's their
they
food?
weren't-
I
they weren't hot.
gotta take that
I
into
think they
account.
weren't hot.
All right,
Yeah,
Hatem, you're
there you
right.
go.
And no Muslims.
I knew you were going to say it. All right, let's talk about another story it's kind of like interesting to me. The California man that was threatened to kill JD Vance in Disneyland, and now he's going to go to. I think the procedure started already in court. So, as a former secret agent, which president you work with, Jonathan?
So I actually, from 2001 to 2014, I had worked with, all living presidents, either in office or former presidents. But I was assigned to President Obama for 5.5 years, or assigned to the White House predominantly during the Obama administration for 5.5 years.
Oh, you missed all the fun now.
Yes.
So can you tell us the story of that guy that threatened Vice President JD Vance? And if you just say something, I saw the tweet from the director of the Secret Service, and he was like, if you joke about it or if you say in social media, we're still gonna get arrested. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
Don't threats me all the time.
Well, that's but you're not the vice president or the president, so. So really, a very interesting case, and this stems back to, I believe it was July of 25, where JD Vance and his family were visiting Disneyland in California, and prior to actually going to the visit, an individual got online and actually got onto the Instagram account and posted to the Instagram account of the Walt Disney Company, and essentially said, the author of this post, placed pipe bombs in preparation of JD Vance's arrival. It went on with another comment that said, it's time for us to rise up and you'll be witness to it. And a third post basically said, good luck finding all of them on time. There will be bloodshed tonight, and we will bathe in the blood of corrupt politicians. So multiple posts that were online, they were attributed immediately back to this individual. Law enforcement found out who he was, went right there, took him in custody. Apparently, at the time of arrest, there were other posts that he was about to make on his phone that also basically had the same through line of making these direct threats. When the Secret Service looks at, threats towards any of the protectees, they look at the means, the opportunity, and the intent to cause harm. And this individual met all of that criteria. And what is worse, and the reason why the Secret Service is amplifying this, and you saw that post by Deputy Director Matt Quinn, and the reason why they're saying that is because these types of posts can also act as a mobilization or a call to action for others. We've seen copycat attacks when we've had protectees either directly threatened or a direct threat acted upon or engaged. We've seen copycat attacks. So the quick identification of this individual, taking them into custody, then making sure that Disneyland was free from any type of threat, not only for JD Vance but for the general public and the employees as well. And then bringing this prosecution is really important because again, it needs to send a message where there's a limit to free speech. You can't make direct threats against somebody's life, whether they're the Vice President of the United States or anybody. Saying that I am going to kill you and do all, cause all of this harm.
Was he actually planting pipe bombs, or was he just deranged social media guy?
They did not find any devices, but again, this is a threat to cause harm.
Yeah, no, I would still prosecute.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to the extent of his danger.
A question for Noam, because I heard a big rumor that you're opening a new comedy cellar in Greenland. Is that true?
If Trump gets Greenland, yeah.
What? No, what's your whole
get in early? Get in early.
Yeah. No, listen, Noam is a great businessman, so he probably in some talks for Greenland Comedy Cellar right now. What's your thoughts? And let's talk. Well, I think we'll have an episode about it. But what's your thoughts on Greenland and how
it's
Trump
the worst thing ever? I go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, okay, I finally know stuff about a topic, so I can weigh in on this. So, hey, folks at home, I host a program called The Political Orphanage. I did a show maybe 4 months ago called Why Trump Wants Greenland. There are good reasons to not let China or Russia get Greenland. They're all geopolitical. The stuff about resources, I think, is overblown. There are a lot of resources in Greenland, but they're so expensive to get. There's no infrastructure that it's kind of pointless economically. Also,
put a pin in that. I want to argue with you. Go ahead.
Well, but fun fact as well, you can also just trade with other countries. You don't have to own them in order to get the resources. In fact, America has a august history of drilling oil in Hatem's country and doing it without having to actually occupy them.
You are wrong about this, but continue.
Okay. Next, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So I think the main reason that people in general want to have Greenland is, at least since like Seward, when we tried to acquire it in the 1860s, is it is geopolitically important because it is directly in the Arctic shipping lanes and in the Atlantic. Whoever has a base there basically controls the North Atlantic. Although good news, we have a base there. We've historically had 2 bases in Greenland. We got rid of one in the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed. We still have a base there. That's really not in question. To my knowledge, nobody up until now was talking about removing American presence from Greenland. So I think the whole thing's unnecessary. I don't see an actual reason that Trump needs to be trying to acquire Greenland for the, I will admit, good reasons that exist. That doesn't seem to be necessary. So what we're now doing is we've gone from what I thought was Trump just saying, like, kind of either thinking out loud of maybe we'll buy Greenland, because if everybody were on board, sure. If people in Greenland were excited to become American and like Denmark would take the money, I'd be okay with it. So like maybe he was thinking out loud. Then I was like, maybe this is just crazy shit he's saying to distract people. He seems to do that a lot. All my Trump friends believe he's constantly playing amazing 4D chess by saying crazy shit that the media goes off and talks about. But now we seem to actually be doing stuff. On Monday, we'll see how the stock market reacts to it. But in June, there's going to be a 10% tariff that's levered. Is it 10 or 25% tariff that's levied on the 8 countries that are actively sending troops to Greenland in anticipation of American action? So the United Kingdom, Norway, and 6 European Union countries are sending over troops to Greenland to support them against American agitation, which is absolutely nuts that we would be at that point with our allies in Europe. Even if you think like NATO should have been disassembled after the end of the Soviet Union and we should have reoriented, good arguments to have. getting to the point where we're having people in Denmark worried that they're going to have a shooting war with America is nuts. It's also, I think, illegal pretty much on every stretch. Like treaties are the highest law in the land. Like they rank above statute under American law. So treaties are very, very important, and they have incredible legal preeminence over statutory law. And we have treaties of mutual defense pacts with all of these countries that are currently engaged in this with us. Implicit in us having a defense pact with somebody is we can't attack them. Like if that is already the law of the land, then we can't put ourselves in a position where we're going to attack them. It's not legally possible. So it's an illegal action were we to do any military operations. And I think Putin's loving it. Putin's absolutely loving that we're fraying the transatlantic alliance, and that we've got it at this point. Again, like I'm open to talking about reforming NATO or even retiring NATO and doing something else, but doing it in such a way that we drive an active wedge between us and Europe, largely out of ego reasons for Trump, is just insane. So this is a crazy situation, and I hope it stops very soon.
Noam, why is Andrew wrong?
Well, of course, let's talk about what he's right about. Obviously, I mean, this is the most ridiculous thing we've ever seen a president do ever, right? The notion of threatening, I mean, anybody, any other country for some piece of their undisputed, we're not even claiming, we don't even have Hitler sense to claim there's a bunch of German speakers there, like that are being persecuted. Not even like saying there's a bunch of Americans that we're going there to protect. Like we just want it. This is right out of the 18th century. So yeah, in that sense, it's a national shame, and I mean, words fail. But as far as the goal, I think Trump is well. Let me just focus in on where I thought you were wrong. Mm-hmm. The cost of getting these resources out today cannot be what you focus on. There was a time when I was a kid when we were told we had more oil in shale rock than in all of Saudi Arabia. It's just too expensive and we don't know how to get it out.
Yeah,
that is a moving target. There will come a time when we will know how to get those resources out, or the resources will become so scarce on planet Earth that the price will become so high that it will then become cost effective to get that thing. And I think where Trump is smart, but vulgar in his methods, is that he would like America to have in its reserves everything that it might someday need in terms of energy production and minerals and rare earth and all that stuff. He's like, we should never be in a situation where we have to depend on the goodwill of another nation for things which may be critical to us 10 years from now, 50 years, 100 years from now. And in that sense, he's right. And, but this is just unacceptable behavior in a civilized world. It just is. It just obviously is. But I would drop the cost of the minerals from your spiel.
I don't disagree with you on that. Like, or alternately, we could say it's kind of like Venezuela, where it's going to take a while to get the infrastructure sufficiently built up to be, but like it'll get there, right? Like we could do it. So I don't disagree with you on the economics of that. It's a moving target and all of that. I guess the part that I find interesting that I will think about is from where I'm looking at, we were friends with Greenland. We were friends with Denmark. We have a military base there. We could just have companies go in and do the stuff and pay them a cut, which is what we've done with so many other countries and what we regularly do. You establish a deal, which Trump loves, and you go in and you guys are going to get 20% royalties from the unobtainium that we mine from Fort Ross. And something like that. I mean, like that's like what we did in Venezuela, basically. Like we were like, hey, like you don't have the infrastructure to do this. You don't have the tools. You don't have the know-how.
Yeah, but you don't know what the future holds. Chubb's like, in the future, China may make them a better offer. You just don't know.
So the idea is maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years from now, they pivot to the Chinese or whatever, and so we need to just like head up now.
How many years after buying Alaska, Seward's Folly?
Yeah.
Was that seen as one of the most important decisions anyone ever made for us? 120, 130 years?
So noting that, and it sounds like we're on the same page in terms of the legality of it and the craziness of it.
Yeah, in every way.
would the idea just be this is a like I think that this would actually be a great acquisition if all parties were on board.
Yeah.
Would the idea just be like way more carrot, less stick? Would that be the long-term good strategy?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that. I don't even know that it's doable. It's not ours. Like we can't take China either. It belongs to Denmark. But I'll say one thing. I can't be alone in this. I never knew it was in North America. Like the projections of the maps we see.
Well, if you never played Risk, like that's like I feel like all Americans get our geography from Risk.
I never knew it was in North America.
They're saying, I'll take Jonathan's view as well, but I would say that, they did a poll and 1 in 9 want to be part of the US. So they're saying that there's another thing that they're going to do is like they're going to start a campaign where, advocate for, try to convince the people there to try to vote to become
Well,
the
that'd be the way to
state.
do it.
Yeah.
There've been pushes to do it.
Yeah, but anything that Trump that says is like it's just crossing the line. Like he can be like, you know what, Vatican, you're like America. We're gonna take you. We're gonna attack the Vatican and take them.
No, for sure. Although, like what's interesting. So, like I said, I did an episode on this. So, Noam, you brought up. And America probably would have got Greenland. Johnson so much that they just wouldn't do it. They were afraid it was going to be a political win for him, and so the Senate refused to sign on to it. But there have been multiple, and we've looked into this many times. And Newfoundland.
So can I just say as can I oh shit, I was going to talk about Hatem. He's back. Can I just say something short? I think we probably all agree, but it's worth saying. We're seeing a creeping brazenness with Trump.
Creeping?
Yeah, like getting worse and worse, like more and more brazen. Ever expanding brazenness with Trump, which is worrisome. He's only in the first year of he's got 3 more years of this, and the Overton window, or whatever phrase you want to use, and he's been vindicated in the results so many times, meaning that it turns out he's landed on his feet, that he gets this kind of almost supernatural belief in his own gut, which I think we all agree there is no actual supernatural monitoring of his gut. Like, he's just getting, I mean, he might have a good gut, but I just worry he's going to do something that is just not so easily,
I don't think
not
he gives
so easily
a shit
undone.
I don't think he gives a shit about rule of law in any capacity whatsoever.
Well, he intimated that today, with his letter that has now become public with, to the Prime Minister of Norway, essentially blaming the government of Norway for him not receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, and basically saying, well, because I didn't get that, I'm now kind of pushing, overly characterizing this, but basically I'm now pushing away my goal to peace, and that's why I'm tying this to my acquisition
I think it's a very accurate characterization of that, Jonathan. I think that's exactly what he said.
It's a confession.
Yeah. But it confuses why then if I'm a person in Norway, or I'm sorry, in Denmark or in Greenland, who may be on the fence of like, well, maybe this is a good idea. Well, wait a minute. Now this is maybe not a good idea. We're just playing to this individual's hubris as opposed to, a real strategic advantage for anybody.
What he does understand, but it's vulgar, it's gangster like, is that if he makes them miserable enough, they will at some point offer up something to make it go away. He's shaking the tree so much And he knows you shake the tree, and sooner or later something falls out of the tree.
Mhm.
And he doesn't know exactly what's going to fall out of the tree, but he may not be wrong that something will. And it's just
But that's who he is. He know
yeah.
from his years in business, it's all about leverage. So how does he create that leverage? It's the same thing in Minneapolis, right? He's going to federalize troops. He's pushing thousands, flooding the zone until people are like, no mas, let's come to a deal, right? And again, it's he has been successful in that time and time again.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we
Whether you
all
like
agree
it or
with that.
not, there has been success.
Yeah.
But he does have the
Well,
Nobel
this
Peace
Greenland
Prize
thing
now.
makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
He does have
Yeah.
the
Well,
Nobel Peace Prize.
yeah, you're right. He did get the Nobel Peace Prize because the lady that received it, is it Machuro, gave
Sure.
it to him, like gave him the Peace Prize. So he ended up getting it. I don't know. I guys, I go back and forth where like the first term I thought, okay, this is sort of like if P.T. Barnum became president. All right. And like this term though, I go back and forth between like, all right, am I just being reflexively liberal and this strikes me as crazy and like I've become deranged, Trump derangement syndrome? And then I'm like, is he like one of these fucking Turkmenistan dictators, like tin pot personalities that wants to have a golden statue of him that rotates so it always looks at the sun? And like this feels like the latter to me. This feels like that latter moment of
In
just
in,
like
tw- in, tw- in, tw-
unboundless ego.
in 2016, everybody should find it. Trevor Noah did this bit about how Trump reminded him of African dictators. Did you ever see this on the Daily Show? It was you can look it up. What we had, it was spot on. Like it's spot on. And yet, would I prefer Kamala Harris as president? No, I can't say I would prefer Kamala Harris as president. What am I going to do?
Really? So like right now, if like there was a weird constitutional convention, like there was some weird thing, we're gonna redo the vote again. Kamala or Trump? You'd vote Trump right now?
It all depends on how I'm going to factor in the risk over the next 3 years. The risk over the next 3 years is higher, and I thought it was a risk in 20, I thought the risk of Trump existed back in 2024. I think the risk is I rate that risk even higher now. But retrospectively, no, I would not prefer Kamala Harris to have been dealing with Gaza, dealing with even Ukraine, even though I'm pro-Ukrainian, but I think this kind of, totally naive view that, somehow Ukraine is going to win the war. I mean, she's just an idiot, right? So in every aspect, the border, I would not. I mean, these are two bad choices.
Yeah,
I would prefer
I
him.
think I'd,
It's the paradox of choice,
yeah.
you choose nothing.
I don't, and I don't like Kamala Harris. Like I'm not versus Biden. My interpretation his car into the mall and old guy that drove his car into the mall on purpose. Like that was my interpretation of that election. There's a little bit more spending. There's a little bit more regulation. There's a little bit more of that like weird gray area graft bullshit they do in DC where like you're a good guy. We're going to give you a seat on the NGO. You get 80,000. It's legal, but it's kind of that ambassador type thing. So it's like, is that like with Trump, it's like Russian roulette. Like it's like
Okay,
you're not getting that slow cholesterol build, but you might have a constitutional crisis where we have a civil
so
war or some shit.
so Andrew, this is I found this. Because I have a daughter who's in high school, that every administration eventually gets reduced to 3 or 4 bullet points in a high school social studies textbook. So,
Mm.
and one of the bullet points to me already is, and this is easily to forget, his election, just the election, ended the chapter of wokeness in America. This was such an oppressive period in our history, fearing that you'd get fired for a tweet, that you'd get like they say the wrong thing. Like he won the popular vote, and that just ended it. Like it was like a wrecking ball to everything we had putting up with from the left. And I would not trade that for many things. That was a huge, huge, important, immediate 180-degree turn in American history. And I think it happened so fast, we even lose sight of the fact, thank the fuck God, we're not living under that cloud anymore. So if Kamala Harris had won, she was a perfect representative of that mentality. Another 4 years of that nonsense, please.
Yeah. So let me, okay, I got a weird take on this, Noam. I don't like the woke bullshit. So
I know you don't.
you're talking to a guy from Oklahoma with a religious studies degree. I think wokeness is just the Southern Baptist to the Democratic Party. Like just all the irritating, sanctimonious, irritating, woke, green-haired people if they're north of the Mason-Dixon line. I don't. Both of them are very irritating when they veer into politics and fuck with my life. They're doing their stuff in their own church or their own protest.
No,
I don't care.
they're
I think the equivalent would sort of be like if the Southern Baptists were able to theocratically suppress culture, you can't say "God damn it" on air, you can't show gay people on TV anymore, and I can get rid of them by having a progressive president that doesn't give a fuck about the Constitution and undermines rule of law. I don't think I would take that deal either. Rule of law is more, as much as I hate the wokeness, rule of law is more important to me than the wokeness is.
well, so far the rule of law is in place. I mean, Trump is not defying the courts, and we had a bunch of presidents fucking with the rule of law. I have to say, Trump is much more vulgar in a way he does it, but. I mean, Obama just said, I'm legalizing the immigrants. And we all knew it was illegal. And the court said, no, actually, you can't do that. And you had even said a few times you knew you couldn't do that. And I'm just going to cancel a bunch of loans. So it's not like, this has been a creeping process. I'm not defending Trump. I'm just.
I actually, no. So this is where some of my cognitive dissonance sets in. And I'd love to get your help on this. So yeah. I don't disagree with you on that. It's not like every president has been unimpeachable and then there's Donald Trump. Yeah. In fact, I'm weirdly tender towards Richard Nixon now. Where I'm like, what did he get in trouble? Why did he get railroaded so hard compared to these other fuckers? So I don't disagree with any of that, but so acknowledging that yes, there has been corruption, there has been a disdain for rule of law, but it's in a more slick, lawyerly, saying the right thing, and we all just agreed to do the thing at the country club kind of way. Acknowledging that, at some point you got to stop it. So what is the bright line that we as citizens or commentators have? Because I'm not going to play the Democrats do it too, so it's okay for the Republicans to do it too. I think it's much worse with Trump than it was with the Democrats, although I will concede it's possible.
The personal greed, he's enriching himself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's almost a different category where he's nobody compares to that. I don't even think that even existed with other presidents that category. That's a rule of law thing, but the rule of law could look. He's testing.
I think at the moment it's sort of okay. The last two or three guys were trying to open up the ketchup jar, they're kind of squeezing it, but he's got a hammer and he's whacking at the ketchup jar. That's kind of how I see this.
Well, here's another thing it's unknowable, but obviously we have a problem with the far right now, the Nick Fuentes and Tucker, all these people, right? They were bubbling up before. Many people feel that Trump has given them license. There's another way to, and many people say, and I think there's something to this, that the years of two things: years of bashing white people and the total destruction of the guardrails where the left embraced the idea that it's okay to judge people by the color of their skin as long as they're white. That this created all this. But my question is this faction of the hard right more or less fueled under a Trump administration or a Kamala Harris administration? You could make the argument that if Kamala Harris were president and just still going on with this anti-white and all this stuff, whatever, that they might even be more appealing now, it's just an interesting thought experiment. She was the worst. The Democrats, they had no business choosing Kamala Harris. That was just, that was not the right thing to do.
It's terrible. So funny that you're saying all that and you're wearing a hat that says, I just hope both teams have fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do think that like you have a very salient point there. Like I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't like bigotry, and I don't think we should think of Americans as racial blocks. Like I would rather I would rather go like the Bernie Sanders route and think of things socioeconomically. Now I'm going to have
Yes.
very, very different interpretations of how to fix things than he is, but I would rather think of things as socioeconomic or ideological than racial. One
But
of the like really dumb things that came out of that woke and like
Can I
to
say? I
define my
guess
terms.
I'd
Yeah,
rather be hated. I'd rather be hated for my wealth than my skin color.
yeah.
But go ahead.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, but yeah. And when I say wokeness, what I mean by wokeness is a an evangelical zeal for identitarian politics and a blasphemous or heretical mindset towards what you can say. That's what I mean when I say woke, right? Like one of those identitarian elements that got really emphasized was to think of everybody as part of a racial bloc. And it's so fun. Like the last thing I want in America is for poor white people to think of themselves as a racial bloc that succeeds based on depriving others of resources. Because like what I was hearing from all my pointy-headed woke friends in New York and at universities the last few years was white people have it too good. You just like you've had it too good too long. You need to take it on the chin. You need to take one for the team. And like one, I think it's fucking stupid because we don't live in a zero-sum world. I'd like
by the way,
that's
the cancel culture starts from the right, not the left. So
Mhm.
it's bad wherever it comes from. I'm
yeah,
like I don't like red team or blue team.
yeah. But I mean,
So
the
like
'66.
I don't like authoritarianism, but like I think it's there was this weird mindset of like, well, we'll just train all the white people to feel guilty and then like take a step back for a couple hundred years. And I'm like, oh, that's very odd that you've tried to facilitate thinking of people as racial blocks, and one of the racial blocks doesn't want to lose status or money and now views everybody else as a threat. Who could see that coming?
All right, last
So like
last question, and then I want to go back just to since we have Jonathan here to the ICE operation in general. What do you think of the overall future of that? Should they change anything? I mean, everybody agrees. Obviously, want to get the murderers, the killers, the rapists out, but is there a different way to do it without because they start tying it politically before anybody else. So we need to take politics out of this, right? But what is your suggestion from your and everybody else's thoughts also about the ICE operation right now?
Well, listen, I think, all sides need to come together in terms of law enforcement. As I said, right now we're seeing this operational, gap. If troops are federalized in start engaging in law enforcement, it's only going to get worse. But what needs to happen is everyone needs to come together and get unified on what is the mission set here, right? And to your point, Hatem, the fact that there are these individuals who are violent criminals that possess some of the worst of the criminal element that's out there, and they're here illegally. They need that needs to be addressed, and that is the role of immigration and customs enforcement. They need to be able to go out and do their targeted enforcement just like that. But at the same time, individuals need to be able to express their First Amendment free speech right. The way that you're going to do that is through unified public safety, where you are engaging. And we saw some calls for this, within the last 48 hours of, I believe that Secretary Noam had asked for local police to set up free speech zones. That's really not like extra. That's putting restriction on free speech. What
yeah.
needs to happen is you need to rely on your local officers to be able to have a fluid area and protect that First Amendment right in one instance and allow federal authorities to operate unobstructed. What ends up happening is you see this amplification on both sides, and then because of that amplification, you see an aggressiveness by ICE officers, and it's making a bad situation worse. But we can do two things correctly at the same time if we work in parallel and in coordination. The more that we decouple local policing with federal action, it's only going to get worse. And then there's a ripple effect, which is, there are a lot of other, crimes that are out there that are being jointly investigated with like the Department of Justice, DHS, and local authorities. What happens to those cases? What happens to those critical support elements that the federal government gives to local entities if we see this disengagement? Again, the consequence here falls on the communities. So we need to actually try to put as much politics aside. You can have two groups working together, even in disagreement. They may disagree over policy, but they need to work together over priorities. Right now, priorities in Minneapolis is preserving the First Amendment right to free speech and protest, making it safe and productive in that environment, but also allowing law enforcement to engage in its lawful functions.
Andrew, final thoughts on that?
I was going to say the exact same thing. Jonathan went down to my sails on that. Good one, Jonathan.
Noam, what's your thoughts?
You can stay, Hatem.
Thank you so much.
I have no thoughts.
File your taxes.
You have no thoughts on that. So I'm gonna do you all
just file with. I'm Christy Noam.
A favor before you go. I'm gonna show you the commercial since you're never gonna see it on your own. It's only gonna pop up in my feed. So let's see. Do we have it here? No. All right. Almost. I promise. Zoom. It's actually pretty funny. Share sound. All right. Here we go. Ready?
States Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump, for securing our border, for deporting criminal illegal immigrants, and for putting America first. President Trump has a clear message for those that are in our country illegally. Leave now. If you don't, we will find you, and we will deport you. You will never return. For too long, weak politicians left our borders wide open. They flooded our communities with drugs, human trafficking, and violent criminals. They put American lives at risk. Well, those days are over. If you leave now, you may have an opportunity to return and enjoy our freedom and live the American dream. But understand this. Under President Trump, America's borders are closed to lawbreakers. Follow the law, and you'll find opportunity. Break it, and you'll find consequences.
We will find you. Doesn't it like a scene from Taken?
Yep.
We will hunt and we will find you. This is actually there's another one that's better than that. Anyway.
No, I frankly, I like that. There wasn't any, from what I could tell, weird, like possibly adjacent Nazi shit to it. It was just like, if you're breaking the law, leave, which like, I'm with that. If you're trespassing in our country, you should get out.
There's another one actually that plays in Netflix. That's better. Not Netflix, Hulu, but just the message, we will find you and we will,
I have an insight. I have it. Don't we have to go?
No, go ahead. Yes.
But I have insight. Like, okay, everybody agrees that the criminals should be deported. That's really not a problem. But there aren't enough criminals out there to make a dent in the immigrant population, so that's really just a small subset. I think that we all understand we can't have open borders. You can't have a situation where whoever gets here can stay. But the problem is that the second someone gets here and we know them even a little bit, and I don't mean know them personally, know their story, see video of them playing with their kids, whatever it is, once they become humanized at all, it becomes unbearable for us to want to throw them out. Like it's just too hard to know that's some good person who's made a life here, who came here because they were desperate, who has kids here, to see them rounded up and thrown out of the country. So I feel like the only practical solution here is they really have to just give up on that notion and they have to find a way to control the border, and they just need to move on. I don't think that the Americans will ever be okay with just even people who think they're okay with it, who think they want it. As soon as they see it on the news, they can't bear it.
I went down to the border 3 years ago on a press junket and talked to the.
So did I. The other side, though.
Yeah, did border patrol stuff, and the takeaway of a lot of the people I talked to was wide gates, high walls. I'm for that. Like, I'm for there being a sufficient security apparatus to knock out the criminal elements that are coming in there. But we also need to be able to expand the legal side of it. That's part of why we have so many illegal people, is when you've got incredible demand for labor in the United States and really bad lives going on elsewhere. Also, we subsidize our agricultural sectors so that like they can't actually compete south of the border with us. And the one thing they could do, which is cheap labor, like that's not at all surprising. It's like we have a national speed limit of 18 miles an hour everywhere, including on the highway. And then we have a lot of people that are illegally speeding. The illegally speeding is bad, but also the law is way too low. We need to have more people that can come over, which is why when I run for president, my plan of hot, smart, or wealthy will be immediately instituted.
All right.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. Jonathan, if people want to follow you or just send you a message or anything like that, where can they find you?
They can go to my website at www.wackrow.com.
All right. Andrew.
I host the Political Orphanage, and we've in fact gone a couple of topics on the show. You could check out the episode on why Trump wants Greenland. You could check out the episode on going down to the border. That's the Political Orphanage.
All right. Thank you very much. Noam, anything?
Nothing.
All right. Comedy Cellar, always great shows. Live from America podcast. Thank you guys so much. Great to see you all. Jonathan, thank you.